can tell. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson. And you gon' learn today, how your team they play, how they play, boy. You gon' learn today, how your team they play, how they play, yeah. We represent that swag, that MEAC, and let me say, what's up to Tennessee State? Just tune into the HBCU Sports Lab with Dr. Cavil, Mike and Charles, and knocking times,
YT Production.
Yeah.
I love my HBCU, and boy, I love it, I love it. I love my HBCU, and man, I hope my team they won, yeah. I hope my team they won, yeah. Man, I hope my team they won, yeah. I hope my team they won, yeah. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, can tell. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson. And you gon' learn today, how your team they play, how they play, boy. You gon' learn today, how your team they play, how they play, yeah. We represent that swag, that MEAC, and let me say, what's up to Tennessee State? Just tune into the HBCU Sports Lab with Dr. Cavil, Mike and Charles, and knocking times, yeah.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. In the studio, baby. Boy, I tell you, I see y'all doing your COVID-19 beard there, Mike. Charles Bishop is finding a way to be clean. But you see what's happening over here? Man, you know, we're going to give it to him rough and rugged today. I'm going to take off this jacket so we can get comfortable and get into some of this discussion. I had it on. I thought I was going to give him a nice little look, but I'm going to bury it off and we're going to come with it. Just let them know that we're ready to go today. We're going to get into some of
the... It's hot in my office, so I had to go.
I see you, Doc. You looking a little slimmer.
I appreciate it. I'm trying. I've been working out every day, 30-plus days straight. We're going to see what it do. 25 pounds. Can you beat 26 pounds?
26 pounds.
Woo. Can you believe it?
That's about three or four. That's about 3 or 4 belt loops.
Yeah, they not quite fitting like they used to. We had to tighten up that belt loop. Welcome and thanks for joining us inside our studio lecture hall, the HBCU Sports Lab, for the only weekly sports talk radio show that is dedicated to exploring the sporting HBCU diaspora, including the marching sport with its unique HBCU culture identity, the teams, the bands, coaches, athletic directors, commissioners, provosts, presidents, big rivalry matchup, classic games, homecoming events, and much, much more of the HBCU athletic aesthetics. As we emerge our lecture sports business practices and competitive sports industry, the show seeks to provide innovative, progressive, and informative dialogue about the week's HBCU sporting events, issues, and ideas from a fan's perspective. We review the Southwestern Athletic Conference, better known as the SWAC, the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference, better known as the MEAC, of the NCAA Division I at the FCS level, Southern Intercollegiate Athletic Conference, SIAC, the Central Intercollegiate Athletic Association, the CIAA, of the NCAA Division II, Gulf Coast Athletic Conference, GCAC, of the NAIA, and independent programs such as Tennessee State of the OVC, Hampton of the Big South, as well as soon-to-be North Carolina A&T, as they have 1 year remaining in the MEAC, as you know. Langston of the Sooner Athletic Conference, as well as Texas College as affiliate member of the Sooner Athletic Conference. and Edward Waters as they transition from NAIA to NCAA Division II and membership in the SIAC. I am Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, a.k.a. the Dean of the College of HBCU Sports, recently given to me by Rob Calloway of the HBCU Report. Check him out. He brings it hot and heavy, sneaks in a little HBCU band report as he's an HBCU band head, so give him a lot of credit for getting it done. With that, let's start with Mike. What type of HBCU sports news of the day do you have this week, or do you want to pass it on to Charles? You going to jump in there, Mike?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and jump in. I think I share with both you and CDB earlier on the text that one that's near and dear to my heart is with the recent COVID-19 struggle. HBCU baseball players could get left off the Major League Baseball draft, and that's a whole story in and of itself. I know you two are very familiar with this story, and it was posted on the Black College Nine's website, so kudos to them for sharing kind of the ins and outs. But the gist of it is that with no games being played and no revenue being generated, the MLB was forced to make cuts to the draft to ease their anticipated cash flow problem. This draft can be this coming either June 10th or pushed back to July 10th. Now here's the crux of the problem. The MLB cut the draft from 40 rounds to 5 with the possibility to going further, most likely going to 10 rounds at the most. Historically, HBCU players have been picked as early as round 9 and on. So this is really going to be to the detriment of HBCU players. And there's one particular HBCU institution that's going to be hit because they were predicted to go pretty far in the NCAA Super Regionals this year. So,
who was that?
There's been some relaxation. That's Alabama State.
Oh.
So, yeah. They were predicted to go pretty far this year with their depth in pitching and with their balanced hitting staff. So there's been some relaxations for the spring sports for seniors, and hopefully we'll go into a little bit more detail. But this is big for HBCU baseball.
Yeah, I certainly agree. That is certainly big. With that, Charles, what are your thoughts on this subject matter that Mike is talking about in terms of HBCUs? And potentially a lack of opportunity of going in those quote-unquote later rounds of the Major League Baseball?
Yeah, I think it's a huge blow in terms of, like Mike said, a lot of times we see HBCU baseball players, when they're selected, you start to see them selected in the later rounds. So to not have those later rounds, at least this season, we'll see what sort of impact that has, especially on those guys that were really shining thus far this season. Especially Mike talks about a team like Alabama State. They had jumped out 14-4 on the season, and as Mike mentioned, they were tremendous pitching staff, and we always talk about pitching at the HBCU level. And this Alabama State team was a team that looked like they were going to be a very, very tough team, especially once we get to the SWAC tournament. They're taking on teams like a Southern or a Grambling and fighting it out with Jackson State over in the SWAC East. So I think this is going to be a huge blow in terms of those pro aspirations for guys that were going to be on the cusp this year.
Yeah, and just to build on that, Jackson State is another team because outside of Alabama State, Jackson State had a powerful hitting lineup. They were tops in not only batting average but slugging percentage. So you had a few sluggers that were, potential higher round or mid-round draft picks. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. I don't know I guess the numbers on what percentage are juniors or seniors, but it'll be interesting to see what Jackson State does.
Yeah.
Yeah, no question about that. One of the follow-up questions I had as we get in that, as we give some love for those that are checking us out today, is I wanted to follow up the second part of that. And so you would, obviously a large part of the article was talking about HBCU baseball players going in a lot of rounds. So as you alluded to, Mike, they're talking about shortening the rounds that people can get picked. So if they were going in later rounds and there's no one picking in those rounds, obviously it becomes a detriment that they won't get a chance to go on. But that also means there are potentially a lot of high school players that may go a little higher and go enough where they would bypass college and go into the league But now this is not the case. Those players are going to go particularly into college. Do you think that may mean that while there may be some concerns about players getting drafted coming out this year, may there be, what are your thoughts on possibly influx of talent being able to come to HBCUs, because now those high school players that may have signed contracts have an opportunity to select the HBCU to go to college?
Yeah, I certainly think and that's a very good question. I think after reading this article, I did some more research. There's certainly a good potential for an influx of high school players to go to HBCUs, but you also have to throw into that JUCO players as well. So does that dilute the influx of high school players coming to HBCUs and, with the JUCO players, because you got to admit a certain percentage of them go higher in the drafts as well. So now they've crammed it down to 5 rounds. So now you have not only HBCU players, but you have high school players, you have JUCO players, some are mid-transfer. So if they can't go in the rounds, they either go back to their university or now they have to look at other avenues. So you do have an influx into HBCUs, but I will say that it probably may be a little bit more diluted.
Certainly. If you would follow up on that part of the analysis there, Charles, if you would.
Well, I think the thing that concerns me is the potential of guys getting squeezed out, and I think we see this, or at least we saw this with football, in terms of, there used to be football players who were consistently drafted, and now guys had to go about the free agent route. So that's a concern, at least for me, with baseball players in terms of getting kind of squeezed out of those later rounds. What becomes the avenue or the opportunity to still get that shot at Major League Baseball?
Yeah. There's no doubt, CB, that some are going to be the real sufferers in this thing is that the mid-range folks, mid-range HBCU schools. So you look at folks coming out of CIAA, because when this article is written, my immediate thought went to large major HBCU. But if you look into mid-major HBCU institutions, bottom tier draft prospects will get hurt the most. So for the most part, the draft picks will be, hopefully they'll be scouted, if they decide to stay another year. But then, if anybody decides to stay another year and take the NCAA up on its offer, they become the elder statesman in the next.
Right.
So it's kind of a rob Peter to pay Paul, push come shove.
Catch-22.
Yeah, the mid-major folks are going to be hurt, and they have some real quality players in the mid-major HBCU ranks as well.
Right.
Before we go into that a little deeper and then get into some other news that we can discuss as well, I want to give a shout out for those that are following us. Had to adjust that equipment. Appreciate y'all picking up on that. Wanted to make sure we got a little more screenshot. We got the new technology we're looking at. We actually have you all, for those can follow us directly from the Blue Jeans app on Facebook, or for those that following us inside the HBCU Sports Facebook Live post now, you can see Charles and Mike from the screenshots that I have up there. So they see y'all talking and going back and forth a little bit. So we added that a little bit. So I wanted to make sure the camera caught that. So rearrange the copy. So we'll play on this over the next couple of weeks and see what we can do in terms of getting some better camera angles and shots like that. But as you see, we'll try to improve and show a couple of more technology and technological components of the show as we bring to you live and adjust. As you see now, we're up here doing the COVID-19 in regards to what's going on there. So let me make one adjustment here as well in regards to that. And some questions in terms of them being able to hear you. So let's follow up and follow that component as we look at it too. Wanted to follow up on that comment in terms of Black College News. As you said, it might be an opportunity for some more players to go to HBCUs. And then your question was, and still next year, what about the draft? So there's some questions about moving forward. How does baseball adjust the draft? Will they continue to do a 40-round draft you would, or would a modified that could put some problems there. With that, Charles, if you would, let me know, what do you think of some of your news of the day? Hold on, Charles. We're having some little technical difficulty there. In terms of your volume, let's see if we can get this back in there. So, Charles, if you would, sorry about that. Could you repeat that? What were you saying?
Yeah, I was about to say this comes to us from our friends at HBCU Game Day. Free COVID-19 testing to take place at Florida A&M's football field. And this comes again from HBCU Game Day. Florida A&M University Vice President Director of Athletics Courtney Gaucher announced that a testing site for COVID-19 will open Saturday, April 25th at Bragg Memorial Stadium parking lot. So this is a quote from Courtney Gaucher. We are extremely excited that we are able to support our community during this unprecedented time. We have been pillars of this community for many, many years, and we look forward to the stature in the years to come. For us, this was a no-brainer. We are FAMU Rattlers, and we're here to support anyone in this time of need. So kudos to Florida A&M opening up Bragg Memorial to be a COVID-19 testing site.
Absolutely.
That's pretty good. Mike, I'm going to give you a chance, if you would. Give some comments on that. I'm going to step away and make a mic adjustment so they'll be able to hear you, but I'll be able to hear too. So I'm going to add one piece of equipment. So bear with me. So provide some additional comment, if you would, on that.
Yeah. So, I guess my initial thoughts are when you have a college such as FAMU, and they're a pillar in Tallahassee, and they're stepping up to offer COVID-19. I know of very few colleges in general that have stepped up to offer that, and they typically are the source of revenue, or really the big major corporation in a lot of mid-sized towns across America. And for them to step up and offer COVID-19 testing, I thought that was huge. I don't know what Florida State, which is basically across the street, is doing. I don't know what they're doing, but I don't know of a lot of universities in general that have stepped up and offered that on campus. So kudos to them, because that speaks volumes, and that speaks of another commitment to care for the community, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of being an active member of the Tallahassee community and offering your facility to demonstrate that ability to be an active member of the community. So kudos to Florida A&M for really stepping out there and being, like I said, an active member of the community.
Yeah, so I would be interested to see how many folks actually showed up, for the testing. I'm sure it's quite the number, but, it's an opportunity, even with social distancing, for the administration, the coaching staff, players, to at least interface, at least from a distance, and to, as you put it, CB, give that demonstrative care in person. Even with social distancing, I'm sure they have things spaced out, and I'm sure there are medical booths set up to do the testing, but it gives a chance for folks to come out and see who they're, and long ways it can benefit the university and the athletic programs, because now they see these people actively caring, they come out, they've seen them there, so they're a long-term benefit of something like that.
No doubt about it. To Mike, to switch gears a little bit, and this is on a somber note, I did want to make mention of the passing of the great Grambling legend, NFL Hall of Famer Willie Davis, and this comes to us from our friends at HBCU Sports, Ken Rashad, but NFL Hall of Famer way. This was last Wednesday at the age of 85. Of course, Willie Davis, a member of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, one of the pillars of the Green Bay Packer team of the 1960s. and I wanted to just send a shout out to Bramlett family and his family as well, and in terms of the passing of the great Willie Davis.
Yeah, I saw that as well, and you talk about a legend, a legend that played for a legend. Kudos to him, and I know hats are going off to the Grambling family. So Willie Davis, man, just to share your story, man. Your folks are like mine. They used to sit around at family gatherings and talk about the old school HBCU players. That is where I started to hear his name. You talk about who was great and who played for what university, and depending on where your folks came from, you heard more about those names. So you heard a lot about Willie Davis. So, hats goes off, but you remember him in more than a couple of ways. So.
Yeah, and to follow up on in terms of remembering him in more than a couple of ways, not only was he a tremendous football player, but get this, he earned his MBA in 1968 from the University of Chicago School of Business. He served on the boards of Dow Chemical, MGM Resorts, Schlitz Brewing, Sara Lee. So not just football, but Willie Davis was the total package in terms of athlete as well as a civic member of the community as well.
Absolutely.
All right, able to join back in there. So just wanted to say appreciate y'all filling in as we made a little audible, as they would say during their time, a testament to Willie Davis. I think was appropriate in a lot of ways. So just wanted to bring to your attention with that any additional news you have there, Charles.
Sure. And this comes to us again from HBCU Sports, but Virginia Union. They released their football schedule, the 2020 football schedule. So we will just have to, hopefully, we'll see what happens in the fall in terms of whether we're going to have an abbreviated season or a season at all. But Virginia Union wanted to make mention that they out their 2020 football schedule, and of course September 5th, that's a huge one against Hampton. So we'll see what happens with Virginia Union and all of our HBCUs with regards to football season.
The homecomings and the classics are at stake now. So absolutely.
It sounds like Mike has gotten a little nervous.
I've been shopping for my tailgating gear, dude. So I'm like,
what we really want to know: do you have any new recipes, tailgate secrets?
Absolutely, but I could share now, but then I'd have to kill you. So
you can't share one of them with us.
No, not right now. Good Lord willing, and we come up on the season. It looks like things are starting to flatten. I may tease you a little bit, but yes, I do have about 3 good recipes, new recipes, secret formulas, as you will, that I'll be willing to share.
Oh man, that's cold.
I'm looking forward to it, Mike. I got
that's
one
cold.
for you too.
Uh-oh. CB, you got one for me, CB?
Oh, Charles done dipped in the treasure chest, and he says he's ready now.
Oh man. I've been brushing off my cooking skills during this time away from athletics.
I see you, CB. Look at you, smiling away. All right, I'll tell you what I am willing to share. One more piece of news, though. Former Johnson C. Smith University, of course, this comes again from our friends from HBCU Sports. Standout Danielle Wilson is to be enshrined in the NCAA Division II Track and Field Athlete Hall of Fame. So congratulations to her. The U.S. Track and Field Cross Country Coaches Association announced Thursday that Danielle Williams of Johnson C. Smith University. Kudos to them, because to be honest, we don't say their name quite a bit. So she'll be enshrined in the Track and Field Hall of Fame in the class of 2020. So Melissa at University, Maryland, I guess, Miko Kalimo, and I don't want to mispronounce her name, Dinsdale Morgan, Pittsburgh State, Chris Reed of Minnesota State, and Brian Vickers of Ashland. So tremendous class there. If there wasn't the mandatory 5-year moratorium on induction to the Division II Track and Field, she probably would have gotten that anyway, according to sources, I saw this a couple of social feeds as well. So between 2013 and 2014, Williams won 9 NCAA titles, 8 individual and 1 relay, 13 CIAA championships, 11 individual, 2 relay, and earned 13 All-America honors, and was named to the USTF, again, the United States Track and Field College Country Cross Country Association National Women's Indoor Track and Field Athlete of the Year 3 times. So that is a big acronym, but kudos to her on waiting the 5 years. Sounds like she deserved it, much sooner. And kudos to the Johnson C. Smith family as well.
No doubt about it. That's kudos and big time honor. What are your thoughts on that, Charles?
Well, anytime you go into a Hall of Fame, it speaks to your career. So kudos to Johnson C. Smith for getting that out there in terms of the accolade, if you will, going into the Track and Field Hall of Fame.
No doubt about it. You have some additional news that you wanted to add on to that?
Well, yeah, I'd be remiss. I have to make mention the Texas Southern, Cynthia Cooper Dyke.
Woo! You saw that too, huh?
Yes.
Oh, wow. They brought in some highly decorated individuals, one of them being Yana Clark, former McDonald's High School All-American. She went the JUCO route. She is 6'3". She averaged a double-double, 18.8 points, 10 rebounds, and almost 2 blocks for number 7 Central Arizona College. They finished with a 28-3 record this past season, but she, the native of Long Beach, California, was a 5-star recruit rated by ESPN and was named a McDonald's All-American coming out of Poly High before going the JUCO route. So Cynthia Cooper Dyke getting out there and bringing in some heavy machinery, if you will.
No doubt about it. I had a chance to be on that last recruit you mentioned in terms of her interest in studying some sport management. So I was excited to get a chance to be a part of maybe a small part of the reason why she decided on Texas Southern University. It's pretty cool. Mike, what are your thoughts on what Texas Southern is doing down there under Coach Cooper, Cynthia Cooper, in terms of these recruits at Texas Southern University?
Man, that, I mean, you got to just step back and look at the recruiting job. I mean, already with that recruiting class, you got to argue: are they, barring what happens with the COVID-19, are they the odds-on favorites going into? I'm just saying. I'm not putting anything out there. All I'm talking about is what I'm talking about. But with this recruiting class, and as big as it is, is Cynthia Cooper making an indirect statement? That's what I'm saying.
I definitely think she's making an indirect statement, but I think you got some news down on the Prairie View, some pretty solid recruits they got in on the women's side. You got to, Southern is going to continue to chip away and continue to get better. So you can't, you don't think those. And the last one I was going to add to get your thoughts in terms of Jackson State, both in terms of what they're bringing on and what they're losing. They are obviously the defending champions. Didn't have the tournament, but they won the regular season, and they won it going away. Obviously, it was a battle from Texas Southern University, but at the end of the day, Jackson State stretched out the lead separation between Texas Southern and made a statement. Remember, they beat them twice. You can say what you want in terms of who played or whatever. The first one, everybody played from Texas Southern. It was in Jackson. They got it done. Overtime as it had to be, but then they returned the favor when it was back in Houston. They found a way to win it again. We didn't get the third part of that to happen, maybe in the tournament, to kind of get to see what could happen in terms of potential sweep, or would Texas Southern get the big game, if you would, in terms of what it means to a tournament institution. But Charles, with that being said, give us some indication of what's going on in Jackson.
Well, I think the trend that you see with Jackson State Southern, Prairie View, and Texas Southern is everybody went out and got some bigs. Everybody went out and got some size. So I think that was the big thing that you saw in terms of some of the signings that you had on the women's side of the ball. You had to go out and go get some rebounders and some ladies who can score on the inside. I think that was one of the things that Jackson State kind of had a bit of an advantage this past season in that they had two young ladies who were able to score and really rebound the basketball on the inside, and I think that gave them an edge in the majority of their games. I think when we take a look at the SWAC, a lot of times we tend to think of it as a guard-dominated league, but Tamika Reed kind of changed the paradigm a little bit this past season.
Yeah,
That's a great point there. Go ahead, Mike. Jump back in.
yeah, and you look at two teams. I mean, Jackson State was overall 18-10, conference record 16-2, and then Texas Southern was 14-4. Two arguably the top teams. I think Jackson State heads-on was probably head-to-head and statistically the favorite, but you wonder with this next round of recruits, and I don't know who Jackson State is losing. I don't know if they're losing any seniors, and probably CBU could probably elaborate to that. But with this new round of recruits, I don't see Texas Southern as taking a step back, and I don't know what Jackson State has lost. Factor in maybe Southern. You still got to say that these are the top two teams going in next year for the SWAC to contend for the SWAC championship.
Well, I think you take a look at what Jackson State, they bring back their backcourt. They are losing Marnisha Hamer, who was a stalwart for them, especially with what she was able to do this past season coming off the bench. But they bring back a lot of pieces, and they're adding a couple pieces there that I really like in terms of bolstering that size in the paint. So it should be a fun season. And it was a very fun season this past season on the women's side of the ledger because you had Jackson State that was kind of separated themselves, but I thought coming into the tournament, Texas Southern, we saw Alabama A&M knock off Jackson State last game of the regular season, but I thought it was going to be a great tournament and very competitive.
Yeah, I thought so too, and I thought it seemed like the league was a little bit, I will agree with you, a little bit more guard dominated. So I will see, I think you'll see a different type of play next year with a few more post-up players, a lot more rebounding. So I think you'll see a lot more, a different style of play, hopefully with the guards coming in, but with a lot more size in there. I think you'll see a different style of play. But I still contend to the fact, outside of Southern, you got your hands on. If you're a betting man, you got to put your money on Jackson State and Southern, kind of Texas Southern actually repeating as the two top contenders going in, at least looking on paper and statistically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as we talk about that, there's a question whether there's going to be a football season, but you would like to believe that basketball would take place. Obviously, that would almost be full circle if you go to the point where it doesn't start to the tournament. But obviously, people don't always realize that basketball starts late November as they start with some of the non-conference games and kicks off, because oftentimes we don't get into December with the tournaments that take place around Thanksgiving and then certainly around Christmas time. Even more so, a lot of people don't get into conference play when football is pretty much completed, particularly at the college level after bowl season, and then you get into the conference play, which seems to be more important. But that gives us a chance to transition into an article that I really want us to break down in terms of what your thoughts on this, and particularly with each individual that breaks it down, which looks at what's going on in the football season in terms of preparing for the budget crunch, back and forth the conference asks coaches to delay some money and things of the nature. But before I do that, if you would, Charles, any other news that you want to discuss before we get into a little bit of this article? One thing that I thought was interesting in this article, that it had so many different individuals that spoke up from different perspectives of what we look at in terms of college athletics. It had an athletic director from a Power 5 school, Joe Castillo, and then it talked to some other individual former members that had their components touched on college athletics education. Former U.S. Education Secretary Arnie Duncan. It had, as well as founder of sports analytics consultant firm Navigate Research by A.J. Matistas. It had comments from Nancy Zimber, former chancellor of the State University of New York. and now a member of the Knight Commission that looks into athletics and what they believe athletics should be at the college level. There's also a statement by comments, I should say, made by David Reedpath, a former NCAA compliance director and a professor of sport business at Ohio University, the first university to have a sports management program. Talks about a book he wrote in those frameworks. So I thought it was really interesting when you get in there. It also has former Big 12 Commissioner Dan Beebe and their thoughts. So it took a lot of people that are in the business. A lot of them obviously are former administrators, so oftentimes they may be able to be a little more open in terms of the thoughts and what's going on here. So I wanted to share that. But before we take this deeper dive in this, Charles, any last news that you wanted to get out before we move and really investigate this article here?
Yeah, one last article, and this again comes to us from HBCU Game Day, but HBCU double standouts. They finished atop the national tennis rankings, and shout out to the Xavier University Gold Nuggets as Angela Charles Alford and Layla Bashir, the Intercollegiate Tennis Association Small College National Women's Doubles Champion during the fall, and they held on to the number one ranking through the end of the season, according to the Oracle ITA NAIA rankings of 2019-20. So kudos to those young ladies, Angela Charles Alford and Layla Bashir.
Yep.
Great job of making sure we got that in there. Want to give a shout out for those that are following Chuck Hunt. It's great to be back to watch and listen to you all after dealing with Easter Sunday morning tornado in Monroe, Louisiana. Yes, I hope everybody's safe out there that received national attention. I was without power last week from Sunday through Wednesday. Wow, that's challenging. I appreciate you all reaching out to me, and it was meant so much. Certainly want to send prayers and love to you, Chuck Hunt. Thank you for finding a way to get back with us and checking us out, and hopefully we can give you a little reprieve, both from this COVID-19 and obviously additional items that you're dealing with in terms of the tornado. So I love the setup in the quarantine. Yes, we're going to keep giving it to you more and giving you more situations so you can feel us and certainly get it done. He says he sees Charles and Mike. As I told y'all, we have y'all they being on the screen now, so now people don't just see your voice, they can actually see you. And obviously, like you said, you can go to Dr. Cavil and check it out, coming out the Facebook feed directly from the Blue Jean app there. With that, we have Willie Alex Hine in the house to get HBCU news. Did you see uploaded on my YouTube page 1991 Orange Blossom Classic between Southern and FAMU? I saw that. That was nice.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Jump in there, Mike.
Yeah. You talking about the classic football. I don't know where we're headed, but there is one more thing with the draft coming up starting this Thursday. This comes to us from HBCU Game Day. I saw this earlier and I almost forgot about it. South Carolina State offensive lineman Alex Taylor is predicted to be the next big NFL draft prospect coming from an HBCU program. I would say where he's projected to go, but there's like 4 or 5 different places. So he's 6'8" at 3/8. I don't know how you get to 3/8. So I just would have called it an even 6'9". So he's one of the tallest players in the 2020 class. One of only 4 FCS players to participate in Reese's Senior Bowl in January. He's generally graded with 4th to 6th round projections. So I've heard 4th, I've heard 5th, or a couple of 5th rounds. So needless to say, maybe him, a couple of others. He's probably the highest offensive lineman since last year. Alabama State's Titus Howard went to the Houston Texans. So so we'll look to see where he's going and see if any other HBCU players will have a chance and make it in this, I guess, truly altered draft that starts this Thursday.
Yeah. Certainly. I like the way you snuck that in there, Mike, but that's some big news to get in there. South Carolina State continues to get it done. Sound like you have some thoughts on that, Charles?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen over the last maybe 4 or 5 years now HBCUs in terms of putting offensive linemen in the league. We saw a couple with Tennessee State. We've seen Alabama State last year, and Alex Taylor continues that trend of HBCUs having offensive linemen in particular getting a good look going to the next level. So kudos to Alex Taylor, South Carolina State. Thank you, Alex Hines, for putting out that information. I was watching that 1991 Orange Blossom Classic today with Southern and Fam. I got the Celebration Bowl on now. So, I mean, I thank you for putting that stuff out there because it keeps me sane watching a little football.
Yeah. Who won the band? Who won the competition? I didn't see the whole thing. I started watching some of it, but I was interested. Who won the Battle of Bands? Because, that's the jukebox against the Marching 100. So.
Yeah, and you don't even want to go there.
Yeah, I think that depends on who you asked. I know Charles really doesn't like either one of them, so he could care less.
I want to start some mess. I want to start some mess on your show, DC. I bet the jukebox probably was the better performing band. I'm just saying.
And we got some rattlers listed too. They'll have some fun. Let me get through here because we got some other folks in the house to get HBCU news. Did you see that? As Willie talks about that, yeah, Jimmy Wilson said he's in the house. Congratulations on the fitness goals. What's up, you three? What's up, Mike, Charles, and Doc? Looking at the Doc with the improved technology, Aggie Pride. Lonnie Shaw's jumped in here. Jimmy says, yes, I did. I love your channel. Anthony Weston is watching. He gives a shout out. What's up, everyone? And so trying to upload some other. I seen another classic where they talked about back in the Circle City Classic with the Grambling and FAMU in that matchup with the big play. I saw that highlighted on some of the HBCU feeds. I thought that was big, and I remember that with Doug Williams coaching Grambling at the time. Big time. FAMU came in there pretty ranked, highly ranked, and Grambling put it to them, represented the SWAC well in that matchup. We got Wendy jumping in here, checking us out, and Reggie Howe checking us out well, giving some love to Amos Fawcett. Aggies over everything. Brian Fulford is watching with us, so no discussion about the NCAA spending $500 million tournament reserves before 2018. Yeah, they going to have to get into some of that reserve money to save some folks, but it's going to be interesting to see how long that lasts. Black College 9 has jumped in there, as we certainly gave them some love in regards to that HBCU report that they did on baseball. Great information there. Covert high school tight end move to offensive tackle. Talking about the South Carolina State player that you mentioned there, Mike. Alex Taylor may be the only HBCU player drafted to Damon Talbot of the NFL Draft Diamonds.com in a recent conversation we had in terms of that. So that's some information going out. But Brian Fulford, you can check him out in terms of BCSN and the report that they give with AD. Check out their shows as they provide a lot of good HBCU information as well. With that, let's jump back in here and get into this report a little more, as I alluded to a while, and we can kind of close out the show going back and forth in terms of the information here, because I'm just fascinating on what's taking there. If college cut sport programs, could new athletic department models emerge? And so I kind of want to get your thoughts on that. Let me do the introduction and just read this part of it so we can really dig into this. This comes from the Detroit News, Associated Press column that was written. It's picked up some steam around the country, if you would. College sports programs are already being cut, and more are likely on the chopping block. The coronavirus pandemic has triggered fears and the economic meltdown on campuses around the country. The cancellation of the NCAA men's basketball tournament cost schools $375 million. More losses are expected, especially if football season is disrupted in the fall. Obviously, we up over 3 or 4 weeks ago talking about the NCAA men's basketball tournament cancellation, what it means to HBCUs. We were out here talking about, we're just hearing that about $500,000 from each school we know that was lost in regards to the distribution, essentially from just about all the schools in the SWAC, to give you some indications of where that starts with just the basketball. It goes on to say that in tough times, athletic administrations often drop programs to save money. And so that's been a lot of discussion in regards to, will programs be dropped? Should you not drop programs? And this is kind of where this article goes back and forth, is about cutting programs, or do you cut other things? And ultimately, what would a new athletic model look like in terms of college sports from an athletic program perspective? It goes on to say in the past few weeks, Old Dominion said that it will drop wrestling, and Cincinnati will no longer have men's soccer. Warnings of tough times ahead have come from all over the college athletics. Even some of the wealthiest Power 5 programs are having concerns, which brings us to a quote made by the athletic director, Joe Castillo. And so I want to kind of get your thoughts on this as we go further into the article and break it down. To say it's not going to have any economic impact, that would say we would be grossly naive, said Oklahoma athletic director Joe Castillo, who oversees a program that had $148 million in operating revenue in 2017-18 and boasts of 20 straight years of balanced budget. We're just hoping to minimize it, he said, paving the way for more cuts to come. The commissioners of 5 bowl subdivision conferences have asked the NCAA waive over the next 4 years a slew of requirements for Division I membership, including minimum number of 16 sports that must be sponsored. Let's start it from there in terms of your thoughts on that alone, that component, if you would. Going with you, Mike, do you like the idea that these bowl subdivisions, and these have been made by what many refer to as the next 5, not necessarily the Pi 5, even though you might see them doing some things as well. But this is next 5 in terms of some of those conferences like the MAC that we picked up earlier, the American Conference, if you would, about them petitioning over the next 4 years to minimize the number of maximum sports that you have to sponsor to be a Division I school. What are your thoughts on this? Is this something that you like the idea of, or this is something that that you would concern you? Go ahead, Mike.
I think it's. I see it. if I had to characterize it, DC, I see it as concerning, with some understanding. Understanding given the current environment, the current circumstances. This is a crisis by no means, but to completely 180 and change your model long term based on a pandemic that is current is I think stretching the bounds of the future success of your program. And so I think for us to or for any program to go and say long term we're going to cut a certain program because of 1 year pandemic or 1 year disaster, I think we have to step back, take a look, and see what we can do short, medium term before we make long-term decisions based on short-term events. Mm-hmm. So that for that reason, it concerns me a little bit. I understand the rationale, I understand the thinking, because if you look at it now, fundraising down, and fundraising goes to a lot. Ticket sales down, the revenue from the actual events down. I get it. But to go and to really take away from the programs, which bring not only athletes, but also bring students. You got to realize these are students as well. To go and cut some of those programs, I think is a little bit far-reaching at this point.
Certainly. Charles, what are your thoughts on this first petition out there by these bowl subdivision programs to ask the NCAA to waive over the next 4 years a slew of the requirements for Division I membership, including the one we're discussing here, the minimum of 16 sports to remain a Division I program?
I don't know. I think I read the article from an HBCU perspective, and I guess Mike mentioned it's a short-term sort of situation with long-term implications. And my question that kind of came up in my head is this an inflection point in terms of completely looking at your program in a different light? Maybe you're participating in sports at the wrong level, in terms of, and it made me ask the question, especially with regards to HBCUs, is it time to seriously look at operating at the Division II level? I can't speak to the next group of 5 because they have their own financial issues, and that will hit them over the next 4 years. But I've completely read it from what does this mean for HBCUs? If fundraising is down, if ticket sales could potentially down, the sponsorship could potentially down, then where does that leave us from an HBCU perspective?
Yeah, I like that you brought that to the table. Let's move on to this with a different perspective coming from the former U.S. Education Secretary Arnie Duncan, that many of you may remember served under President Obama. Budget reflects our values, is his quote. He is now co-chair of the Knight Commission in Intercollegiate Athletics, and he's quoted as saying, I think we'll see now whether in a time of cutbacks, what gets prioritized? Is it the interest of adults, unbelievably high salaries, or is it the interest of student athletes in preserving their chances to compete and put academics first? We've seen quite a bit of this going on with seeing some athletic departments taking furloughs, some of them taking budget cuts in regards to salaries for coaches and administrators. We've seen it at the conference level. We continue to see it going on. Now we just recently seen Boise State in terms of the whole university taking furloughs, which includes coaches. And so I'll go straight back to you, Charles. What are your thoughts in terms of budget reflect values and what is going to be cut? Are we talking about cutting sports, or are we talking about cutting perspectives? And I like the fact that you chimed in HBCU perspective, so I'll let you do the HBCU perspective and let maybe Mike give us an overall perspective as we come to the top of the hour. What we'll do is, as we look at this, before you get in there, I'll kind of put a pin in and a thought in this and just give some general thoughts, and we'll revisit this and maybe take a deeper dive, get it a chance for our fans out there to see it from their perspective, and so they can chime in next week as well in terms of some of their comments. And then we'll take a deeper dive maybe into this article as we're up against it, and just wanted to kind of tease some people in terms of getting that in there and give you some further thought in terms of where we're going to go in terms of the discussion over the next couple of weeks in regards to what does this look like for college athletics overall, and then in particular, as we like to do, what does it really mean for HBCU sports? So your final thoughts in terms of just where we are in this landscape, if you would, Charles. I'll give it to you and then ask Mike to chime in for a minute or two perspective. Thank you.
I think I'm tremendously concerned. Because I don't think we're going to. I think we're going to see a new normal. I don't think college coaches will be able to command a salary beyond what the times call for. I think it's very concerning in terms of, like I said, I think we've moved into a situation where I think it really will be a new normal. I don't think sports will be what we've watched prior to this past March.
Yeah, certainly. Great points. And your final thoughts there, Mike?
Yeah, I agree with CB in that this is going to be it is definitely a paradigm shift. There will be a new plateau and a new normal for what we watch. I think it will take some time to recover, but I think at the same time there will be some institutions that will not recover fully. And that's what concerns me, because those smaller mid-major size institutions, will they be able to recover from this? Yes, your larger institutions that are really hurt by the lack of NCAA disbursements, fundraising, sponsorship, they'll recover. But long term, will some of your smaller institutions, and to CB's point, will your HBCUs, and for me, will your mid-majors, your smaller HBCUs be able to recover as well? So those are where my concerns lie. And as far as where your budgeting goes, I think it will force some institutions to prioritize, but because of institutional culture, there's going to be different prioritization in different areas. And that concerns me for a number, and that's a whole different show. That concerns me for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah, we'll come back to this, and we'll get a chance to really take a deep dive in there, because I think this is a subject that many people really want to hear. And while we've had commissioners, athletic directors talk about it a little bit, I really wanted to go in from a business perspective and take a deeper dive and do that. So this article really gives us the chance to do it because of all the perspective it brings. Again, If colleges cut sports programs, could new athletic department models emerge? I have an athletic model that I've been putting out there a little bit, so I'll get a chance to share that. This article was done by Ralph Russo, so I wanted to make sure that I provided him the correct kudos. Associated Press article he put out there. As we start to come up with it, I certainly want to make sure that we play this.
Rob Calloway, host of the HBCU Report, and right now, you're inside the HBCU Sports Lab with my guy. All hail the dean of HBCU Sports. You know I named him that. Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, my guy. What's happening, man?
You know I had to do it to you. Y'all thought y'all were going to get away with not hearing that?
You got it queued up.
Yeah. I would have thought COVID-19 killed that too.
No, sir. Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop, presented by THG Agency. I am Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, the Dean of the College of Sports, with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. As we come to a close, hope you enjoyed our lecture today as we break down the business and give you HBCU sports in the news. Look forward to us for interviews coming over the next couple of weeks, as well as a deeper dive in terms of what HBCU college sports looks like and college sports in general overall could look like, what maybe it should look like, and what it may likely look like. So keep checking us out so we can give you what's going on there. Again, we want to thank you for listening to Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Every Tuesday right here from 6 to 7 right here on KCOH 1230 AM, Houston, Texas. Follow me,
I love it,
Dr.
love it.
Cavil,
I love it,
Twitter,
love it.
Facebook,
I
and
love my
Instagram. That's
HBCU.
DRKENYATTAL.
I hope my team they won one. Yeah, I hope my team they won.
Again, that's DRKENYATTACAVIL. Dream big. We continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. Course lecture dismissed.
If they loud, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with this hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they want a lot, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson. And you gon' learn today, how your team they play, how they play, boy, you gon' learn today, how your team they play, how they play, yeah. We represent that swag, that MEAC, and let me say, what's up to Tennessee, stay, you tune into the HBCU Sports Lab with Dr. Bill, Mike and Charles, and